My name is David Case. I was born and raised in Brooklyn and Manhattan. I've also lived in Bronx and Queens. This collection of poems I have are called Skeletons Across America, a collection of poems by Dave Case. I wouldn't have been able to get this chapbook together if it wasn't for a friend of mine, Mithun Khanna, who illustrated the cover and formatted and typed my poems. I wrote these poems over a long period of time, and I use poetry to express my feelings about social issues in this country that I find upsetting. It gives me some sort of relief. But it's not the final solution. Final solution is, mass movements will make history change. Poetry has been used over many centuries as a way of showing injustices in different social settings. And the first poem is called Poetry Can Be a Deadly Serious Enterprise. Poetry is a deadly and serious enterprise, I can assure you, as the life stories of these poets can attest to. Nazim Hikmet of Turkey, jailed in total 12 years and forced to flee his homeland in 1950, leaving his wife and only son behind, who he never lived to see again. Pablo Neruda of Chile, Nobel laureate, murdered in 1973 by Pinochet, a monster created by the CIA. Garcia Lorca of Spain, murdered by Franco's fascists in Granada, Spain, 1936. Otto Rene Castillo of Guatemala, director of propaganda of the Revolutionary Armed Forces, brutally tortured for 4 days and then burned alive in 1967 by government troops armed and trained by the USA. Roque Dalton of El Salvador, murdered by a CAA-financed death squad. Jose Marti, revolutionary leader of Cuba's War of Independence against Spain, died in battle in 1895. Regino Pedroso of Cuba, jailed for 6 months in 1935. John Greenleaf Whittier of our nation, Quaker and abolitionist, almost murdered by a pro-slavery mob, and the list goes on, forwards and backwards in history, because poetry can be a tool to point the way for humankind toward a bright and glorious future of real freedom, social and economic justice, happiness, and the brotherhood of mankind. And the first poem I'm going to read is called Mr. Burns. I understand well, Mr. Burns. I can relate to your concerns, but the openings are few, and we cannot employ you. I know your family has to eat, has to pay rent, gas, and heat, but what am I to do? The openings are few. And you're not young and chipper anymore, and there are young men, jobless and poor, who'll be more productive than you for less pay. So, Mr. Burns, please leave. I've much to do today. No, Mr. Jones, I won't listen to you anymore. Get up now and leave. There's the door. Calm down, Mr. Jones, I mean Burns. Don't be so irate. To all your concerns and misfortunes I can relate. I only have a miserable and thankless job to do. It's not my fault we're downsizing and the openings are few. But Mr. Burns, I'm not the owner or CEO. Again, I must ask you, Mr. Smith, to go. Mr. Burns, stop cursing at me. Leave or I'll call security. Stop threatening me. I have a wife and young children too. Please understand it's not my fault the openings are few. Oh, Mr. Burns, why are you pointing that gun at me? Oh, God, why are my pants wet with blood and pee? Why, God, have I been shot? What have I done? Mr. Burns in his own mouth places the gun. Why, dear God, am I dying? What have I done so very wrong? I've worked hard to keep the company competitively strong. For this I should be doubly blessed, not at age 35 laid to rest. The murder-suicide makes front-page headlines for the day, but it's soon forgotten by most. when the Mets and Yankees play. The next poem I'd like to read is Please, Mr. Policeman. Please, Mr. Policeman, don't shoot me. I'm just a black kid, joyful and free. I want to grow up like you, to be a man. So please don't shoot me, Mr. Policeman. If you got to know me, you'd see the goodness inside. I'm only wearing a hoodie because it's cold outside. And I'm just talking on my cell phone to my hun. Why, Mr. Policeman, do you think it's a gun? Why, Mr. Policeman, do you think I'm so bad? When just a minute ago I was chilling with my dad. We were talking and laughing. Now I'm dead and he's sobbing. Why, Mr. Policeman, are you so full of hate that a young black life doesn't rate? Mr. Policeman, I was just walking along, leaving a candy store, doing no wrong. You left my girlfriend without a husband-to-be. I hope she can move on and get over me. You left my mom without a son to be proud of. She gave me so much encouragement, so much love. You gave my dad a lifetime to wonder why. If God is good, why did I die? There was so much I wanted to do and see. Why, Mr. Policeman, did you kill me? You want me to go on? All right, I wrote a memoir called Pigs. I like to read. I think the first time I heard the word pig used against the cop was in 1964 at an anti-Vietnam War rally where the cops roughed up and arrested several peaceful protesters, including myself. I think the term pig used by oppressed people and anti-war demonstrators in New York City and other parts of America to describe policemen is inaccurate, unfair, and should not be used. I base this assessment on my experience working on a dairy farm as a laborer when I was 16. I attended Brooklyn Technical High School when it was all boys. This high school had a farm cadet program for the summer. I signed up for it and was given a choice to work on a dairy farm in upstate New York or on a chicken farm in New Jersey. I chose the dairy farm. The first day on the farmer told me, "If you can't do the work, I'm sending you home to New York City tomorrow." I said no problem in my Brooklyn accent and proved that I could not only do a man's work, but could outwork the farmer's son, who was about my age. My favorite chore on this farm was to feed 2 small pigs in the evening who were being fattened up to be slaughtered before Christmas, and then consumed by the farmer's family over a long period of time. For this purpose, the farmer had a very large freezer to store the carcasses of the pigs and the carcass of a heifer he was going to slaughter as well. The thought of eating these pigs in a ham and cheese sandwich nauseated me, and often I thought of liberating them. But then where would they go to be safe from the butchers? As time went by, I got to know the pigs and became very attached to them and they to me. Being a city slicker, I thought pigs were dirty and wallowed in mud. On this farm, the pigsty was clean, and it was my job to keep it so. The pigs did their business in a corner of the sty as far away as possible from their food bin. I soon learned that not only were pigs clean, but highly intelligent. They made various squeals and grunts which indicated their emotional states of mind. When I walked toward the sty in the evening with their pail of food, they made squeals of anticipation even though they couldn't see me, because they got to know the sound of my footsteps. Those squeals became louder and more rapid the closer I came to the sty. When I dumped the pail full of chopped up corn into their feeding bin and they commenced to eat in unison, they became silent except for the grinding sound of their teeth into their food. Even though one pig was larger and stronger than the other one, he didn't hog the food from the smaller one who got his fair share. Once they finished eating, they made grunts of satiety and contentment. One evening, a dog followed me to the pigsty and jumped in when I wasn't looking and chased the pigs around in circles, trying to nip their tails. Then the frightened pigs made high, shrill squeals of fright and anxiety before I could throw the dog out of their home. Often after they ate, I rubbed and massaged their backs with a blunt-ended stick which elicited squeals of delight. a pig version of the purring of a cat. I noticed that the pigs were very affectionate toward one another, often rubbing their snouts together while making tender squeals and grunts. The different squeals and grunts they made toward each other and the external world numbered 13 and was a kind of language which I got to understand. Never once did I see one of the pigs act in a bellicose manner toward its companion, and often back then I wished my relationship with my brother and most people in my life, I am a product of the foster care system in New York City, was as good as the one the pigs shared with each other. For reasons I won't go into here, I had to sleep with one eye open during my childhood and teenage years in the 4 foster homes I grew up in, while the pigs slept blissfully side by side. I envy them. Getting a good night's sleep is still a problem for me. These pigs, nor any of their brethren, ever arrested me as the police did 3 times on bogus charges or brutalized me on 3 occasions as well. Once during an anti-Vietnam War protest where I was clubbed. I still wear the dents in the top of my skull. The number of times I've had to deal with rudeness and threats by police since I'm a political activist are too many to count. But what I've gone through with them are inconsequential in comparison to the evil they do to people of color who they murder, frame, and beat up on a daily basis all over America. Every 28 hours in America, a black man is killed by the police. So please don't insult the pigs I fed and got to love by calling cops pigs or any other animal that doesn't do violence to its own. Please come up with a better name.
That's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah. Pigs are nice and highly intelligent, and they're affectionate toward man and toward their own. All right, I wrote a poem with Eric Garner in mind. It's called Why Mr. Policeman? Why, Mr. Policeman, did you choke me? I only sold 1 Lucy, and I just broke up a fight. I did what was right. If I didn't hurt a soul, why am I in a chokehold? Why am I down on the ground with my wrist behind me bound? Why is feeding my family such a crime when CEOs rob billions and do no time? Why, Mr. Policeman, is Wall Street exempt from the law and I'm not because I'm black and poor? Why is your knee pressing down on my face? Why is your partner reaching for a can of mace? EMS, where are you? I can't breathe, I'm turning blue. Why, Mr. Policeman, am I dying? My 6 beautiful kids will soon be crying. You gave my mother a lifetime of heartache. I hope her poor heart doesn't break. I hope my wife can let go of the anger in her heart so she and our kids can make a fresh start. Why, Mr. Policeman, when deadly force is used? In the case of cops, it's always excused. Why, Mr. Policeman, did you act like a Klansman? You only changed the color of the robe, Mr. Policeman. Instead of lynching me from a tree, you did it by choking me. This poem I wrote, Don't Go Off to War. It represents the way I feel about what this country does over and over again. It's an imperialist nation. An imperialist fight. War is part of their agenda to steal resources from poorer nations, to steal cheap labor, to dominate the economy of these poor nations. And I lived during the Vietnam War era, and this poem brings back memories of how I felt back then about my friends going off. A lot of my friends were nice kids, and they believed this country. And a lot of them served in Vietnam. Not one of them came back, a happy person. And a lot of them came back addicted to different drugs. Anyway, this is like an anti-recruiting poem. Don't go off to war, my lads, don't go off to war. Don't listen to the fifes and drums, don't be dazzled by the flag. You have nothing to gain and so much to lose, don't go off to war. Don't go off to war, young woman, don't go off to war. Don't listen to the fifes and drums, don't be dazzled by the flag. There are many battles right here to fight and too many dead upon the field. Don't go off to war. Don't go off to war, dear friend, don't go off to war. Don't listen to the fifes and drums. Don't be dazzled by the flag. You'll come back without the smile I love so much and with hatred in your heart. Don't go off to war. Don't go off to war, my workmate. Don't go off to war. Don't listen to the fifes and drums. Don't be dazzled by the flag. You'll come back without your hands to do the work you love so much. Don't go off to war. Don't go off to war, my son. Don't go off to war. Don't listen to the fifes and drums. Don't be dazzled by the flag. You'll come back without the wit to charm the ladies. Don't go off to war. Don't go off to war, dear father. Don't go off to war. Don't listen to the fifes and drums. Don't be dazzled by the flag. You'll come back without your legs, and who will play with me? Don't go off to war. Don't go off to war, my love. Don't go off to war. Don't listen to the fifes and drums. Don't be dazzled by the flag. Stay home with me where you belong. Don't go off to war. Don't go off to war, poor soldier. Don't go off to war. Don't listen to the fifes and drums. Don't be dazzled by the flag. Don't fight Wall Street's war. Don't kill your fellow man. Come join with us right here to fight the makers of the wars. Don't go off to war.
You know, that reminds me, just a little aside, one issue that our culture systematically avoids dealing with is when we run into a bad cop.
A bad what?
A bad policeman. Was he a military veteran? They never ask that question. Here. Oh, we have some.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah,
But they do learn bad habits that don't get corrected when they become cops.
Yeah, but the best of the best that come back, they get into the anti-war movements. Like Ron Kovic. You know, they made the movie Born on the 4th of July about him. Oh, thank you. Okay,
You want some more?
I'm okay. No, my mouth dried up really fast. Okay, I'm ready to go. Okay, I have a poem here called Cherokee Woman, and it comes with an introduction. Removals from Southeast United States: Choctaw, 1831, Seminole, 1832, Creek, 1834, Chickasaw, 1837, Cherokee, 1838. By 1837, 46,000 Native Americans had been removed, opening 25 million acres of land for white settlement. Many were slave owners who started up plantations where cotton was grown. The words Trails of Tears originated in 1831 during the Choctaw removal. Many of them died during the 1,200-mile march to Indian Country, Oklahoma, a territory of the U.S. The Cherokees' land was sold at gunpoint. They lived in North Georgia and were removed in 1838 and were stripped of their rights and forced to move against their will. Some were in shackles on the Trail of Tears by the governments of Georgia and the U.S. Anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000, some historians say 5,000, died during the march from exposure, diseases, and starvation. The number of Cherokee who were removed numbered 16,542. Some of the Seminole escaped into the Everglades. The U.S. government in today's dollars spent $500 million to try to exterminate them, but couldn't do so and gave up the fight. Many escaped slaves joined the Seminoles. One of their chiefs was half black. This group of Seminole are the only Native Americans who are technically still at war with the U.S. government, since they never signed a peace treaty with the U.S. Many still live in the Everglades. A quote from a soldier who was from Georgia who fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War and participated in the Cherokee removal. This is in quotes. "I fought through the war between the states and have seen many men shot. But the Cherokee removal was the cruelest work I ever knew." Okay, the poem is called Cherokee Woman. Out of Oklahoma she rode to Texas, tall and straight in the saddle, a heart beating as one with the hoofbeats of her stallion, to claim the land that was stolen. She rode over desert and prairie, consecrated by the blood of her people. Cold and heat were her companions, but she wasn't one for complaining. The earth was her bed, the big sky her blanket. The coyote's howl was God's lullaby. Under the hooves of a prancing stallion lay buried the bones of her tribesmen, mixed with those of the bison. She communed with the ghosts of her people. The sound of the wind was their wail, teaching her the lore of her nation, of its life and ways, before they were mine and thine. The lights in the heavens were her compass, ever leading her onwards and onwards. The wail of the ghost implored her to claim the land that was stolen by the cotton planters who grew rich by the sweat and the groan of the slave. She rode east to the land of her nation, her heart beating as one with the hoofbeats of her stallion, to claim the land that was stolen. I have a poem here called Checkmate. I just want to tell you in advance, I use a metaphor, and the metaphor is the Red Queen. The Red Queen is the Soviet Union and the former socialist countries in Europe. The greatest chess game ever played was not on a coffee house chessboard arrayed. This game covered 1/6 of the earth. Lenin moved the red pieces, and socialism was birthed. The Reds vanquished the whites and their allies, and capital was reduced to plaintive cries. It was wounded but not ready to die. The Russian workers and peasants won history's greatest battle. Led by Lenin, the chess master, they checkmated capital. Capital has now killed the Red Queen, but the king is still alive as in 1917, and Lenin has awakened from his dream, and he stepped out of his marble mausoleum. There was a big job to be done, many struggles, big and small, to be won. With a hint of a tear in his eye, he took in the world scene. His mind, as before his long sleep, was calm and serene. He had no time to lament or mourn. Lenin looked at the chessboard and moved the pawn. The chess master is now moving the Reds and educating them well to checkmate international capital and send its corpse to hell.
Nice. You're a smart cookie.
I love Lenin.
I didn't know you were so smart.
I don't know if I'm smart,
You're like
but
a genius already.
I don't know. I won't go that far. All right, I wrote a
You have
poem.
some nice rhymes. I like your rhymes.
Since I wrote a poem about Lenin, I am obliged to read a poem about Karl Marx.
Time for another drink, the lady says. Where's the bottle? Can you feel it in your throat?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know why it's getting so dry. I probably don't drink enough water, period. Thank you.
Well, it does use your throat when you talk. You gotta keep it lubricated.
Oh, do you want it? Okay. No, stick it here. So mine? Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. In 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, a lot of these capitalist pundits said, it's all over with for socialism. That Karl Marx, wasn't accurate in his assessment that capitalism, one day will be overthrown and the workers will take power. So I wrote this poem called Marx Ain't Dead. Fools, don't be so quick to toast Karl Marx's death. If you could listen, you'd still feel his breath. Marx is dead, some foolish men like to dream. They think that now they're on a winning team. They've won an inning or two, there's no denying it so. But as a wise man once said, one monkey don't stop no show. They've stomped on the weak, but will never cower the brave. They think that now it's within their grasp the world to enslave. For them, capitalism and freedom are one and the same. The foolish men think with dumb sheeps they can easily tame. Their freedom has given us sexism, racism, hunger, and war. Their real agenda is to devise methods to steal more and more. But let me tell you a truth that will never go away, that in their world, the class struggle is there to stay, and that as long as dank sweatshops and slums exist, the beautiful dream of Karl Marx will persist, that an organized proletariat to a new world will give birth, and that the downtrodden will become the rulers and inherit the earth. So fools, the just struggle for socialism will never be dead, and amongst the oppressed, Marx will always raise his hoary head. I wrote this poem, Muslim Girl. It's a combination of a love poem and a political poem. Muslim Girl. What is hidden behind those almond eyes that lock with mine as we ride the same bus every morning? What is the expression on your face obscured by the veil? Are you happy or sad? Are you in love? Were you sold as a child bride to a wizened old man to keep hunger from your family's door? Do you have dreams? What are they? Will they come true? Can they come true? Muslim girl, where do you go on our shared bus? Why do you look at me sometimes with a trace of a tear in the corner of your eyes? Muslim girl, please lift the veil and let my embrace veil you from the horrors of this world. Muslim girl, I love you.
Nice.
And I wrote a memoir after I came back from Cuba, the first time I went there. It's called Conveyor Belts Have a Tale to Tell. The first conveyor belt I came in contact with was on a dairy farm in upstate New York, where I worked for the summer at age 16. This conveyor belt moved baled hay from wagons up to the hayloft where I was stationed. The farmer, working at a furious pace, placed bale after bale on the conveyor belt, which had spikes protruding from it to keep the bales from falling off. I had to keep up with the farmer and stack each bale in the loft up to the roof. The hay stored in the loft was fed to the cows, steers, and heifers during the cold months, when the farmer's 350 acres of pasture land were barren of grasses that the bovines consumed during the warm months. Without a hayloft well stocked with hay, the farmer would go out of business and lose his farm. That's why he worked at a fast clip on the belt and expected me to do so as well, for which I was paid $15 per 100-hour week plus room and board. The minimum wage in New York State was $1.25 per hour at this time, and less if food and board were factored in, and much less for farm work. At age 16, I couldn't make the connection I can make now, how exploited I was, and how the conveyor belt was a tool of my exploitation. Instead, I was thrilled with being able to keep up with the farmer and to be able to outwork his son, who was about my age. I was happy knowing that the farm work would build up my muscles and endurance, and when I returned to New York City in September, I'd be one of the toughest kids on the block, if not the toughest. At age 19, I came into contact with another conveyor belt at United Parcel Service, where I worked part-time as a truck loader in the evenings while going to college. This conveyor belt brought parcels of all sizes and shapes to the back of the lengthy 18-wheel truck I was loading. Unlike the farmer's conveyor belt, which sent up one hay bale at a time, this belt belched out batches of parcels at a time, and I had to scoop up many more than one at a time to keep up with the belt. Once I scooped up a batch of parcels, I had to move as fast as possible to the back of the truck, stack them, then run back to the conveyor belt for another batch of parcels. Supervisors were constantly patrolling about watching the loaders. If you couldn't keep up with the belt, you were summarily fired at the end of the shift. The part-timers were not unionized, and there was no one to speak up for them when they were fired. I can estimate now that this belt forced me to work at least 3 times harder and faster than the farmer's belt, even though most of the parcels weighed less than a bale of hay. But at age 19, as at age 16, I couldn't appreciate the degree of my exploitation made possible by UPS conveyor belts. Since I was a gymnast and on a city college wrestling team, I looked at this work as a workout that would improve my strength and endurance, which would make me a better gymnast and wrestler. I considered myself lucky to have this job since I was being paid to have a workout better than any I could have in a gym. During the loaders' 15-minute break, they would stuff themselves with sodas and food from a vendor who was allowed on UPS premises, who sold food and beverages from a truck. I rarely ate anything, although I drank copious amounts of water from a UPS water fountain to save the cost of a soda and to rehydrate myself, so I'd be able to continue working at the pace you had to work at to keep the job. After the rehydration, I would do one-arm chin-ups with the other hand behind my back from overhead pipes to increase the intensity of my paid-for workout and to show off to the other loaders who were seated with their food and drink. At the end of the shift, UPS took back the 15-minute break since you were obliged, at peril of losing your job, to pick up and load all the parcels that had fallen off the belt between the loading platform and the open end of the truck. There was one aspect of how UPS treated its part-time loaders that touched a nerve in my 19-year-old body. That before 6 months were up, no matter how well they worked, UPS would lay them off and then rehire them back again a few weeks later. Because if a loader, and this is in parentheses, there were no women of color, or no women or people of color then as there are now, worked 6 months or more, according to union contract, he would become a full-time unionized worker with an automatic hourly pay hike titled to union benefits, which included paid sick days, paid holidays, paid vacations, health care benefits for him and family, regular raises, seniority rights, and retirement benefits if he lasted long enough. At age 41 in Cuba, I came into contact with a different kind of conveyor belt and a sugar refinery. I went to Cuba with a group of Americans invited by the Cuban government to familiarize ourselves with the achievements of the Cuban Revolution and not to be tourists and lie on the beaches and sip Cuba Libres, rum and cokes. We were taken as a group accompanied by guys who spoke English. Some of them were members of the Young Communist League, to a sugar refinery, Lenin Vocational High School, a psychiatric hospital for chronic schizophrenics, a citrus farm, etc. At the sugar refinery, I saw a slow-moving conveyor belt transporting every few minutes a 100-pound bag of refined sugar from the refinery to street level, where 3 husky Cuban men of about my age or younger were stationed. One of them flexed his muscles good-naturedly for me to see, and I did the same for him. When the bag arrived, one of the men would leisurely pick it up and place it in a truck nearby. I was intrigued by this snail-paced conveyor belt and why 3 men were probably doing less than 1/10 of the work I did for the farmer, and probably about 1/30th of the work I did for UPS. I asked one of our Cuban guys who was in the Young Communist League why 3 men were doing the work that 1 man could do with 1 arm tied behind his back and hopping on 1 foot in my country. He replied, in quotes, "Unfortunately, the sugar refinery doesn't have work for all 3 men, and that it's psychologically healthier for all 3 men to do a little work and be together as workmates than to send 2 of them home, even though they would be paid. Since in Cuba, if you're unemployed due to no fault of your own, you get paid your full previous salary till you go back to work, no matter how long it takes. And if retraining is required to put an unemployed worker back to work, the Cuban government provides the training free of charge." The young Cuban communist then added, "In Cuba, work is done in a way that it builds you up and not wears you down, and that since the workers collectively own the means of production, their unions decide what the pace of work should be." It took me a short period of time to digest what the young communist said to me. Since speed-ups are the norm in my country, since companies are privately owned and making a profit, not the well-being of the workers is a raison d'etre of hiring and firing workers. Thanks to the Young Communist explanation and thanks to my good friends Marx, Engels, and Lenin, I had an epiphany at the sugar refinery that all conveyor belts are not created equal and that each one has a tale to tell. Good for another one?
Yeah.
Okay. I have this poem called Chug-a-Lug, or What It Means to Be Homeless. Chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, sadly sang a tiny bug as it zigzagged down a busy street, skirting the many passing feet. It sang its poor heart out. I'm just a teeny, weary bug. Chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, cold and all alone, wishing I had a home where I'd sleep in a fluffy rug, nice and warm and safe and snug. Chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug. I'm homeless and not to blame. My house was consumed by flame. On the tenant's cat's tail I hitched a ride as she jumped through the blaze to the street outside. When she landed, I was thrown upwards and away, and I've been cold and homeless since that awful day. So someone please take me home so I won't be so cold and all alone. I only need a small space on a rug because I'm only a teeny weeny bug. Chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug. Before he could take another step or sing another word, as if by God's grace his heart sob was heard. Stopping near him was a kindly man in a dark suit, and a tiny bug jumped in his shiny black boot. Soon the teeny weeny bug was warm inside and could see through the frosted window the sleet and snow outside. He now cheerfully sings, chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, I'm just a teeny weeny bug, warm, safe and snug by a fireplace bright, dozing in a fluffy rug.
Hey, what's that one you just skipped, man?
What?
Which one did you just skip?
I missed that one and I skipped this. I got another one.
What's that one?
Be All That You Can, dedicated to Ron Kovic. You've heard of Ron Kovic?
No.
No, he was in Vietnam. They made a movie about him. He was born on the 4th of July, and he took a bullet in his spine, and he came back paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh, and then he stopped the train?
Well, he became an anti-war activist. He's still an activist. He's in a wheelchair.
Oh, okay, let's hear that one.
All right, I wrote a poem dedicated to Ron Kovic, who was in the movie Born on the 4th of July. He was born on the 4th of July. And it's called Be All That You Can, which is the Marine Corps recruiting slogan. He was a good American boy who loved his country proud and true, and he wanted to serve his country like his pop did in World War II. And he naturally believed his country would never lie, and he would wave his flag as the vets marched on the 4th of July. And when he became an adolescent, he naturally wanted to be a man, and he naturally believed the Marine Corps recruiting ad, Be All That You Can. Besides, he worked in an A&P, and the pay was quite poor. So what did he have to lose by going to Nam for a tour? So on one fateful day, he enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps to kill a commie for mommy on Vietnam shore. But he painfully learned one bloody encounter too late. To be Wall Street's cannon fodder was his fate. He also learned that the gooks were stronger and wiser than he, that it was a proud, courageous people struggling to be free. A wheelchair has now become his home. No more will he ever romp or roam. The joys in his young life now are few, but he has learned well what he must do. He now attempts to explain to all who will lend him an ear that it's the guys on Wall Street and Capitol Hill we should fear. This life has painfully taught this limbless and hapless young man that to stand up for the oppressed is to be all that you can.
Bravo.
You like that? Let me see if I missed anything. Well, I ended this with a quote from Malcolm X, message to the grassroots. What you and I need to do is learn to forget our differences. We have a common oppressor, a common exploiter, and a common discriminator. Once we all realize that we have a common enemy, then we unite on the basis of what we have in common. And if there's any hope for this country, it'll be that we all come together, all the working people, and stand up to the government and eventually get rid of it and build a socialist society. It's all
Can you
yours.
imagine if Manhattan people gathered together in their neighborhoods, talked it through, and said, yeah, let's replace business as usual with some kind of a natural honesty, and we'll practice that. We'll get together at sunup and sundown like the Jews do, and we'll just meet together and talk about how hard it is to make the change from the old way to just trying to be good and honest and moral and thoughtful. And when it comes to jobs, we as a people will wonder out loud about the different ways people can earn a living, whatever that's supposed to mean, you know, how to get some numbers in your account by what you do. But as far as what numbers appear in your account in terms of what you do during the day, there is opportunity for all kinds of design to go on. It isn't anymore you walk over to the factory and your supervisor tells you what you do and you get pay at the end of the week and all that. It's just basically what numbers in your account give you power. And while we're on that subject, instead of the language about worker, we just appeal to the public that the problem at hand is the 1% versus the 99%. The 99% aren't workers, the 99% is the public. And the idea of the democracy in general, the hope of democracy was that human beings running around wouldn't have to yield to a big shot, a king, a master, but instead of the master, it was going to be, what is democracy? This idea of equal dignity, as if we're all just as high up worthy as the master. That was the idea. It's the sovereignty of a king spread out among all the people, each people maximum dignity. But unfortunately, in order to earn a living, you have to surrender your maximum dignity and eat shit from a corporate hierarchy. And the revolution is pointing to that and saying that's the cultural flaw. That's what we need to repair, is this surrender to authority. Austin, Texas. Yo ho and ho. I have a business with you that costs you any money and at the same time, long term, 6-figure residual income, starting with your first 3 months. Daryl Thompson. I've been teaching people for years how to make 6-figure incomes. That's what I just heard from that phone call. But anyhow, so I was on a rap, couldn't you tell? And I want to blame it on marijuana. That's what happens when I smoke marijuana. I just talk about redesigning a new way for things to be.
Oh.
And I was going to stand up yesterday at the Cuban event if I had a chance, but they never let me talk at that joint. And I was going to say that if marijuana were legalized in Cuba in the spirit of improving on the revolution, rethinking the revolution in terms of now that we know what we know, how can we make it even better? What could we, in other words, marijuana is basically responsive to suggestion. It turns on your suggestibility. So if there is deliberate leadership in the suggestions, and we say, let's use this change in your mental ways, your mental habits, to use the powers that marijuana does provide for the imagination to be more energetic. And if we give it a problem to solve, like replacing obsolete, or actually we can't call Cuba obsolete, but all we can say about Cuba is they have to go harder in the direction of how to get along with each other, how to be open, how to share. Favoritism is an issue, but that what I felt about what Cuba had going on good was this opportunity to speak your heart out once a week at some neighborhood meeting, that they actually felt like they want their Congress to be an expression of your feelings, and those messages that happen at the neighborhood meeting sort of are supposed to move up through the chain into the government.
No, it does move up. You know, before they change any law in Cuba, there's sometimes 6 months or a year of discussion. The people have to feel it's the right change. Like a few years ago, 250,000 Cuban workers that work for the state were allowed to go in their own business. 250,000. They felt they weren't really producing anything. They were just, you know, but those businesses, you couldn't exploit anybody. Like one of the businesses was fixing eyeglasses. I saw it on the cover of Grandma. You see a woman fixing a pair of eyeglasses. But that actually improved socialism. It wasn't going back to capitalism, because beforehand you'd have to send your eyeglasses off to some big state company and you might not get it back for 2 or 3 weeks. So it was, you know, this is better. It improved socialism. But there was no exploitation of anybody. And the government paid to set you up into business. And you had to pay taxes, you know, because you're getting all the social benefits. So there's 250,000 Cubans now doing, you know, different types of work, like fixing shoes, eyeglasses, stuff that people need, fixing small appliances. So you get it back the next day, you know. So it was a smart move. But before they made that change, there was a period of discussion around that, because they wanted the people feel that this was good for socialism, that it wasn't going back to capitalism.
Now, you're the one with the microphone and not me.
Yeah.
So as a producer, I was playing off that problem. But that's an level. What my trip is, I want to push ideas like that the leadership of a whole culture having a chance to usher marijuana into the culture dramatically, pointedly, even clearly. And the fact that we have postponed its legalization, we at least have that gift that if on the moment when the law is declared unconstitutional as a matter of law, that's when the encouragement to use the marijuana effect for the cause of a peaceful revolution, that we have to recognize we're not enough like Cuba, that instead of the people participating in government, we have rampant corruption and the flow of money to determine legislation. That, in historical terms, that happens regularly in history. That's a tragedy. That's when the people have to regain their power from a corrupt government. Even it's biblical. The biblical Bible is quite aware of corrupt governments where people are taking bribes. I mean, that's biblical language. So to call it lobbying rather than bribing, I don't think fools anybody left on the planet. We know that lobbying is bribing. So that gives us the right as a people to talk about revolution. I mean, we're talking about a replacement of a whole system that has gone bad, all 3 branches. And when it comes to branches, what I'm offering we use the marijuana to design is direct democracy, not representative democracy. We have enough technology. If you have a good idea about something, you get to participate. Wherever there's power attached to an idea in your environment, there's a phone number, an email address, a website where you can challenge it with a proposition that you want to make a change to make it better. And there should be a design in the system, an openness, a transparency in that direction, that any idea in public force is subject to challenge in the name of reason by any citizen, and we design our society in those terms. For example, hey, what do you think about that, man? See, and I want to thank marijuana for me talking like that too.
Well, my feeling is that people who have the wealth and the power, they're not going to give it up with a fight. You cannot appeal to reason with these people. They only fear two things. If you have more gunpowder or more money than they have, that's the only thing they fear. And the state is designed to crush people who want to change their economic system, their political system. So, revolutionaries don't like bloodshed. Oh, am I?
This way, I get close to the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Don't take it personal.
No, I don't think it passes.
But I can use that as an excuse to. Actually, you should sit in that chair and steer the camera. You can even appear a little. It's okay. There she is.
Hey, Joe, I'm giving you this. You can have this.
Thank you.
book.
What percentage of them did you read?
I think I read them all, except.
Except, which one do you think?
I think I read them all.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You can look now. I think you are a poet that I'm so glad we videotaped you, because for this world to extend to the video world, imagine what a jump that is. All these poems to be in a half hour or an hour of YouTube experience. It's like, imagine how the printed page you're offering to the public, these words, these carefully arranged pieces of ink on paper, turns into the wiggling of your tongue and the eardrums wiggling around and electrons flowing all over the place.
Yeah, it's a nice.
Let's hear it for video, man.
Okay, let's say yay for video. I left one poem out. I don't know if you want to
I
put
didn't
it
see
in.
the chug.
Yeah,
Tell me
this
more
is-
about Chug-a-Lug. When I was thinking,
it was
would I have less Chug-a-Lugs in that poem? It's like when you come in, what that is supposed to be is the routine sound that the insect makes.
No, I just came up. It's like, what people say chug-a-lug when they're lifting a drink.
That's what it means. Okay.
Yeah, but most people, it's just I don't know, something that rhymes. That it means whatever you want it to mean. It's just he's singing a song, and he just uses. He likes the sound of chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug.
Meanwhile, now that I got the microphone, should I repeat it? I'm dare you. Can you repeat what I was saying? I was all excited about what I was just saying. That the revolution is me laying out how things ought to be, and you came back with, Joe, they're not going to let you do it. The rich are not guys like that. They're kind of psychopathic. That they don't care about the public. They just want their power, and anybody who's going to take their power, they'll kill them, basically.
Yeah,
They just
well,
will
they
not
use
give
the
up.
police, they use the militia, they use the armed forces. Jack London wrote a book before there was any socialist country, and he never lived to see a socialist country. He died in 1916, called Iron Heel. He imagines a situation where the workers are going to take state power through the ballot, and the bourgeoisie stamps them out with the iron heel. They knew in advance that they were going to win the election, and they didn't allow it to happen, and they used brute force. He actually envisioned fascism, because that's what fascism is. When all the charade of democracy, the fact that we can vote for Tweedledum or Tweedledum, that's
Tweedledee or Tweedledum.
or Tweedledum. When that facade is blown away and the workers realize that these two parties don't mean they're really, both of them represent the oligarchy, the ruling families in this country.
The 1%.
Well, I think it's less than 1%. I think it's more like 1% or 1%.
Okay, I'll go for that.
And they, the bourgeoisie.
Accountable number of families.
About 65. There's books written about them. One is the robber barons. Another one
Okay,
is.
so that's the system we got, and you're saying, Joe, they are not going to let you. But by our being able to say, hello, look, America, there are these 65 families, and they're running the show, and that involves in order to cure the problem we got, it has to stop being that way.
Yeah, well, Marx said expropriate the expropriators. You have to take their wealth, and they're not going to give it up.
But
it hasn't happened one time in history that they gave it up without a fight, and I just can't envision.
Can't we fight them like a chessboard is a fight?
Well, Lenin moving the pieces, it didn't exclude a fight. There's a certain time for the arms struggle, but then before you can even get to that point, people they have to be educated, and that's a long period of time. Before the Russian Revolution, Lenin and the Bolsheviks were operating for at least 20 years, if not longer, to get to the point that enough of the workers were class conscious. They had an organization, and that was able to seize state power. They used force. I'm sure Lenin would have preferred not to have used force, but it's not the world that we live in or the world that he lived in, and nothing's really changed.
Hey, wait, hold on a second. Wait a minute. That last word, prayer there. Nothing has changed since
Really changed.
Now, wait, hold on a second. In terms of that proposition, and then nothing's changed.
Well,
let me offer this. Okay. Here's what I plead with you to consider. That just as we can jump with this to this other thing, out loud video, that other world, there are already people who say, hey, excuse me, I don't watch TV anymore. So, hey, they're tuning us out too. They're going back to the printed page or something with their cell phone. But what I'm proposing is that we go back to the basics. Humanity, the hope of democracy was human beings thinking together. Do I got that right? I mean, isn't that the whole hope of democracy, was that human beings could just share and reason and just be, what do humans do? They talk. So can't they just sort of all talk it out and there be a kind of a harmony where people sense each other's needs and they accommodate them gracefully?